So I will start then. It's okay?
Yeah. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. I can't see if there is somebody in the room.
Yeah, we've got two people. Do you guys want to say hi?
Hello, good morning.
Okay, I can't see you, but good morning. Thanks for being here this early Saturday morning to hear this presentation. I'm going to talk about the circulation of geological knowledge in the 19th century North Fernandez. And well, here I am in behalf also of my colleagues, Delfín Viera and Carlos Acosta Rizo. So this presentation is about the human actors of the circulation of geo-knowledge in the Northern Andes, which is Ecuador, Colombia, and Venezuela during the 19th century. For this work, dozens of local and foreign formal naturalists were analyzed, but also non-formal actors of various kinds. All those actors and networks contributed to build geo-knowledge and meanings of nature and society, not without controversies. In comparison with the history of other environmental sciences, such as botany or zoology, or in relation to countries such as Mexico, Peru, Chile, Argentina, or Brazil, where mining has existed on a larger scale, the approach to this topic in the Northern Andes is considerably less. Is one reason why we choose to do this. Also, the existing literature, as in other subfields of the history of science in tropical America, lacks visions beyond the nation. So, even less studied are the savants who, according to Lorraine Daston, and citation starts, have historically been denigrated as substandard, including the skills of craftsmen, the natural history of hunters, farmers, shepherds, sailors, and other practical experts of the great outdoors, and generally the many forms of knowledge cultivated by non-elites in many times. End citation. So we seek to reveal their indispensability and protagonism and not to emphasize their well-known subalternity alone. We will use a distinction of formal and non-formal knowers, the former being those with formal education, publication, etc. And our interest here is to recognize that, as the English botanist William Hillhouse expressed, referring to his travels in British Guyana, it is impossible to make the step without the Indians. From this, it follows that it is impossible to know without their help. So again, in these processes, general and particular meanings about nature, people, and their knowledge were elaborated, loaded with intentions, many of them focused on maintaining, reproducing, or constructing colonial elements. Intensive and constant encounters, sometimes fluid, sometimes conflictive, occurred between these human actors, but also between them and non-human protagonists, either with natural heritage, volcanoes, rocks, gems, domestic and wild animals, skins, bones, fossils, or with material culture, microscopes, hammers, barometers, tents, paintings, photographic equipment. As a sample here, we can see a large camp of the Germans, Alphonse Stubel and Wilhelm Reis in the Pichincha volcano. You can see their tents, instruments, dogs, horses, mules, donkeys, and more than 16 men that made possible the observation in situ and later mobilization of samples around the world, and certainly provided knowledge. Theoretically, we understand this Northern Andes as a contact zone, following Mary Louise Pratt, and citation starts, a social space where disparate cultures meet, clash, and grapple with each other, often in highly asymmetrically relations of domination and subordination, such as colonialism and slavery, or their aftermaths as they are lived out across the globe today. End citation. Different actors and devices connected that contact zone with, again, the centers of calculation, sensu Bruno Latour, places, networks of accumulation of knowledge, objects, ideas, maps, collection, etc., which, among other things, generate asymmetries by allowing certain groups to become familiar with distant people, fact, places, but not the other way around. So, primary and secondary sources in Spanish, English, German, and French were revised. Most of them were publications, but also letters and an unpublished autobiography of Theodore Wolff. A map of persons and institutions was made with the software Creately, which I'm showing you now this map. They were related with the circulation of geo-knowledge on aspects such as volcanism, earthquakes, stratigraphy, petrography, paleontology, cartography, collecting mineralogy, groundwaters, study, geological hazards, etc. Those actors most associated with the applied activities have been the least studied, since they did not usually publish, although several had a genuine curiosity about volcanism, seismicity, or deep geological time. So you can see also like a zoom in of this map of actors with some of our more prominent or more visible ones like the Germans, Karsten, Humboldt, Sievers, Wolff, and the network around them. Geological exploration had political, geopolitical, military, economic, extractivist, and academic objectives. Economic interests sometimes converged with political and boundary interests. The exploration and exploitation of minerals aroused the greatest interest in the republics, in the European kingdoms, in local and foreign companies, and in many local inhabitants' desire to rediscover little old unexplored territories supposedly full of natural wealth, gold, silver, phosphates, coal or nearby forms, gems, rocks, precious stones. So this presentation continues with two sections. First, I will explain about the formal actors, the formal naturalists of geo-knowledge, local and foreign, so named to distinguish them from those who neither published nor mobilized knowledge through artifacts of modernity. In the second section, I will highlight cases of non-formal actors of geo-knowledge. So let's talk about the formal researchers of geo-knowledge. Through explorations and analysis of collections, local and foreign naturalists built and applied knowledge of various geological topics, concepts, landscapes, subsoils, places, people, minerals, fossils, were represented through letters, publications, exhibitions, conferences, drawings, paintings, maps, photographs. They aroused controversies and had an impact on economies, institutions, national and international imaginaries, and of course, on their personal trajectories. They were naturalists, although with the passage from the heroic age of geology towards its professionalization, they changed from being more like specialists in mineralogy, petrography, paleontology, crystallography, description of gems, rocks, and minerals, study of telluric phenomena, prospecting. Even so, they maintained their curiosity to observe and collect on botany, zoology, geography, meteorology, engineering, agriculture, ethnology, archaeology, history, linguistics, always associating an expanding body of knowledge. The same happened in the opposite direction. Non-geologists, naturalists with all specializations made geological observations, such as here you can see the German Alfred Hedner, who, although remembered for his geographic work, contributed to geology in Colombia after a 2-year stay. His compatriot, Wilhelm Reis, memorable for his legacy in archaeology, made field observations and geological publications on Ecuador and Colombia. Herman Karsten, you can see him here, traveled to Venezuela with a letter of recommendation from Humboldt to the president of that country. More dedicated to botany, this German made pioneering contributions to the geology and paleontology of the Northern Andes from 1850, culminating in his 1886 publication in French with a map, this map, a work only fully translated into Spanish in 2022. It is said that marked the beginning of the systematized and academic geological study of the Colombian territory, and another of his maps, this that you are seeing right now, dedicated to northern Venezuela, is considered the first geological map of that country. So as you can already see, among the foreigners, Germans were the majority. There were also Austrians, French, Spaniards, English, Americans, Belgians, some Canadians, Serbs, Welsh, Scots, Czechs, Hungarian, Italians, among others. So the interests and working conditions of foreigners and locals, naturalists, the formal, could be dissimilar. Few had their own resources, so most were in some way subject to sponsors, public and private agendas of European kingdoms, and in republics, universities, museums, scientific societies, religious orders, such as the Jesuits, collectors, mining and energy companies. Nevertheless, institutional and personal interests sometimes converged, as in the case of Stubble and Rice, whose trip was self-paid, as Humboldt's trip, but the Ecuadorian government commissioned them to carry out explorations and publications, for which they received local support. Tropical approaches intermingled pragmatism and romanticism, something common in the early days of geology. The admiration that some foreigners expressed before tropical Andean nature could contrast, however, with their animosity for local societies. As in the cases of other travelers elsewhere, Spanish-American society was mainly encoded, now I quote again Mary Louise Pratt, as logistical obstacles to the forward movement of the Europeans, end citation. Several projected in their publications the feeling that the local collectives lacked capabilities and that the progress of the nations required more than what they could encompass as advisors of or executors. Theodor Wolff, which you can see here, privately expressed with bitterness his difficulty in adapting to the ways of Ecuador. He preferred to associate with foreigners. In private letters, in the same way, Stubble harshly criticized the Andean societies. So in contrast, local formal geologists were comparatively fewer than foreign ones, a matter that changed towards the 20th century. Trained in foreign universities or in Andean institutions as geologists, topographers, engineers, they complained less about social conditions, although they did criticize the lack of access to instruments, financing, collections, books, journals, magazines, off-prints, possibilities of publishing, and other issues consolidated in the centers of calculation. The neo-Granadian Francisco José de Caldas, the neo-Granadian Francisco José de Caldas, for example, complained about the scientific limitations of his society. Permanently settled foreigners, such as the German Adolf Ernst, also felt the lack of resources for large explorations, although he made numerous field trips. Arriving in America at the age of 29, he first founded a chair of German at the Central University of Venezuela, and then turned to the natural sciences, publishing more than 400 papers, at least 20 of geology. Several were mountaineers, and this in the trend of the golden age of alpinism in Europe. Some had passion for it, which they combined with geological observations, such as the Ecuadorian Nicolás G. Martinez, Holguín, which we can see in these pictures, who narrated his ascents and, in some cases, explained scientific issues. Foreigners were not interested in publishing in Spanish except for those who settled in the Andes or were hired by local governments. Rather, they published in Europe or the United States to gain recognition and boost their academic and intellectual careers. Several of their works were translated by local naturalists. Some national enterprises were also performed, such as the Chorographic Commission, an ambitious Colombian enterprise to map the country, including its mineral resources between 1858 and 1859. Budgetary reasons impeded an extensive geological survey, task performed by Joaquín de Acosta until he died shortly after. Similar objectives, in addition to educational ones, were pursued by hiring Jesuit scientists in Ecuador since 1870 for the National Polytechnic School. So these were some informations and analysis on these formal, local, and foreign naturalists. Let's pass now to the non-formal, making visible these non-formals in geoknowledge. How did one climb mountains, ford rivers, navigate to islands, locate mines, carry equipment for observations and collections? Local and some foreign actors, non-formal professional naturalists, provided care and empirical knowledge about materials and territories, participating in the discoveries. Collectors, guides, stewards, guardians, interpreters, oarsmen, navigators, porters, diggers, muleteers, cooks, hosts, informants, hunters, students, disciples, or people with different types of economic or political power, among others, help to explore, stay overnight, send samples. On more than one occasion, they saved the lives of formal naturalists. Here we can see some drawings and pictures of these actors, this river, carrying the luggage, informing the formal explorers, or just controlling the boat so this family can enjoy champagne in the Magdalena River. This is one of the most usual portraits of people carrying these loads. Many travelers recognize this non-formal in their publications with varying intensity. Although they are everywhere, they have been little analyzed, as historians have concentrated on the formal figures, their networks, and publications. This bias casts distorted views of the processes of knowledge that are being debated through approaches such as circulation. Relations with indigenous were not always smooth or idyllic, positive or happy, beyond the confidence or not in their knowledge. Sometimes they were averse to the travelers, to the point of trying to lose them or make them die of exhaustion and illness. Nor did they always share knowledge, although the travelers knew that they could learn a lot from them. Local, but also confused foreigners that were excessively credulous, overconfident, or perhaps in a hurry to raise information, something criticized by their peers. The credulity in the others' knowledge also occurred in the opposite direction, as broad sectors gave authority and work to the naturalists. Politicians, including presidents, often sought to meet with them. They were received with the illusion that they would unveil the mineral wealth. Some naturalists highlighted the locals by name. In reporting the first absolute ascent to Cotopaxi volcano, Wilhelm Reis, the German, credited his butler Ángel María Escobar reached the summit as did his dog. He gave, as you can see here, he also gave the list of the peons who have accompanied me to the Cotopaxi and who can serve as guides. 14 names with surname and place of origin, specifying who reached almost to the top and who up to the owning. More to recommend their names than to recognize merits, but it is still important. In contrast, Nicolás Martínez Holguín, which we saw a few minutes before, alluded to 28 expedition members in his report about the Tungurahua volcano. People from schools, universities, and the observatory were mentioned by name and surname, as well as 2 guides, Segundo Pérez and Eloy Rodriguez. Other 10 peons remained anonymous. So we can see here the list. And here we can see another expedition of Martinez, also with a dog. In his autobiography, Wolf mentioned dozens of people, but not necessarily did the same in his publications. For example, one of his explorations was made on foot, accompanied by an indigenous hunter in the almost uninhabited and difficult to access jungles of Mindo and Nanegal on the western slopes of Pichincha. His longest trips were made only with a few Indians. This is Alfredo Jan, a Venezuelan naturalist, and he also made a geological map of that country. And in this photograph of Jan, an explorer takes notes in an excavation while behind him, 2 excavators, shirtless, manipulate the tools to access the subsoil and make it visible to the naturalists. You can see one here at the right, and here you can see the other. You can see the arm and the legs. The immigrants, not just national actors, were also important. Wolf relied on foreign assistants, such as Carl Honstetter from Bregenz, a skilled hunter and taxidermist for the Zoological Museum. And you can see here another example. After his visit to the volcanoes of Turbaco, Humboldt wrote that the boy who guided us said that they were caverns that made boo-boo, and that the priest assured that they were thermal mineral waters in which sulfur floated. In 2 lines, he mentioned 2 informants. And another example. In his book, as a result of the Chorographic Commission, the Colombian Manuel Ancísar listed names of people who supported them, several as guides. The director of that commission, which we can see here, the Italian-born military Agustin, both members of his family, although their names did not appear in the official reports. His wife, Araceli de la Hoz de Codazzi, served as de facto quartermaster, chief logistician, and hostess. The commission counted on interpreters, porters, muleteers, peons, vaqueanos, led by the butler José Domingo Carrasquel. A picture painted by Venezuelan Carmelo Fernandez shows a character with a spyglass here, which is expanded here. Presumably a naturalist, and the daily life of the camp where it was necessary to cook, write down and organize notes and reports, set up and repair tents. The observations were not made in a vacuum, but thanks to multiple supports and knowledge that made it possible to look, interpret, measure, collect. It so happened that the naturalists recognized names, but not necessarily merits. Of a Stewart and Rice, made Ecuadorian painter Rafael Troya. So Stubble, which was the explorer, considered that the landscapes of Rafael Troya were largely obtained thanks to himself. He wrote, quotation, "He has the advantage to paint very quickly and readily obeys my orders, so that 50% of the pictures can be considered my own creation." End quotation. So I will now move to some conclusions of this research. We have partly unfolded the layers of a deeper history of geo-knowledge that had been hidden from historiography. It reveals the omnipresence and agency of both famous formal naturalists as well as non-formal. It has been a first scratching, and the subject certainly deserves further evaluations. The invisibility suffered by a group of actors, the non-formal, imposed a review of primary and secondary sources, searching for them in geological knowledge and in the networks around the best-known naturalists, who were nodes for the construction of an intricate map of connections. We ratify here issues already pointed out, such as the inaccurate traditional rhetoric of discovery. Without the skills and knowledges of that many persons, discovering or knowing the Andes would have been almost impossible for modern technoscience. This was valid not only for the fieldwork or the mobilization of artifacts and collections, but for the development of theoretical issues such as biogeography. Formal naturalists did not make discoveries in solitude, although they had enormous merits for their courage, methods, elaboration of maps, taxonomic keys, engineering works, publications, collections, comparisons between places, and theorizing. Their ability to organize thorny logistics to traverse the Andean countries also stands out. It is not, therefore, a matter of belittling no one's contributions or originality, but of ratifying that the silences on hundreds of factors, both in the contact zone and in the centers of calculation, and in their intricate fusions, of course, is part of coloniality, a long-lasting process structured in layers. These silences, provoked by naturalists, financiers, states, historians, and at times by local people themselves, is one of many layers of colonialism. Other layers are the relocation of collections and the place of knowledge and authority, changing and giving new names to objects, situating the adequate place of authority to write history, constructing different meanings of nature, denigrating local knowledges, particularly indigenous, disregarding local societies and their capacities, among others. The most ambitious explorations were costly, but even the modest ones were crossed by chance, socio-political and warlike turns, economic interests, and difficulties such as health issues. Those who stayed longer in America made more excursions close to the cities where they lived, sometimes with only one guide. Local naturalists did the same, ascending mountains, exploring rivers, forests, coasts. Several had their own resources, others obtained them from actors associated with extractive interests. Money from the republics usually was scarce, so although large-scale projects were planned, not always they could be sustained over time. Logically, scarce resources limited the scope of the research. And this is important, doubts remain about the relationship between formal geologists and indigenous forms of geo-knowledge. Although it is evident that the explorers obtained many information from locals, it is not clear how open they were to different traditions and ontologies, since they did not record it. The reviewed literature contains mostly details about foreign and local naturalists who made long explorations or spent much time in the Andes, sometimes entire lives. Humboldt, Busingol, Karsten, Sievers, Codazzi, Stubel, Rice, Wolf, Ernst, the Martinez brothers, Yang, the Acosta are among the best known. Dozens of others, anyhow, require attention, such as the engineers of the School of Mines in Paris or the contractors of English companies. Very little is known about the companies created in Europe and which failed. With this, I will finish, and thanks for your attention. And of course, I'm very open to a dialogue and questions.
We could do questions right now, or we can move on to the next parts of the presentation. And save the questions for the end, whatever is preferred, really. Do I ask questions now?
I have a question.
So there is no another presentation. It's because we are 3 people in the
Okay.
program, and it's the same presentation. So we also have Delfín and Carlos here
Yeah.
in the virtual room. So the 3 can start the dialogue.
Okay, so yeah, so go ahead with your question then.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for your presentation. I'm particularly interested in or intrigued by your network and how you.
So sorry, can you come closer to the microphone? Thanks.
Good morning. I'm from Dalhousie University in Halifax and from information science as well as history of science. I'm intrigued by the network that you constructed and particularly your efforts to build the informal connections with many actors that are involved in that, and it's impressive what you've been able to uncover so far. I'd be interested in hearing more about the sources that you're using to understand the informal network, because you've used paintings, you've used some documents, etc. But what sources are you using to find that sort of information? And then are those individuals also in that network map that you constructed or showed in the early part of your talk?
Okay, thanks a lot for that question. So about the sources, I can say first response, and also Carlos and Delfín, please feel free to jump in if you wish to add something to my answer. The biggest problem in tracking these non-formal actors is that they don't leave visible tracks. So they don't publish, they don't leave us textual sources, visual sources, etc. So we have to use the formal the sources left by the formal researchers as a proxy to approach them. And surprisingly, they are all around there. It's incredible how many non-formal actors are named by characters such as Humboldt, Boussingault, Sievers. They're always saying, we met this, I don't know, Black navigator that spent many years with us. This Indian saved us from dying, etc., etc. So we are relying a lot on the sources left by these formal explorers, and they are of various kinds. Of course, the most important are the textual publications, the publications, the textual records, but also visual sources. There we have paintings, drawings, photographs, of course, since the middle of the 19th century, and we're trying to look for them all around there. This, of course, has a bias because we are seeing the non-formals through the formals, but it's a matter of looking for them. So it is how we are doing this job, and of course in the map I've showed you that we are creating with this Creately software. They are also there. So what we did in that map, if I can share screen again, let me show you some detail. We divided, sorry, my computer is slow.
That's okay.
Okay, I'm arriving. Here I'm arriving. So um, all the um, all the yellow boxes are either national actors or these non-formal actors, which are always national, almost always national. And what we did was to divide here. We have this circle represents Ecuador. This one represents Venezuela, and this one represents Colombia. This one represents Germany. So these are countries. Each nationality has his own color. So green ones are Germans, or red are Italians. As you can see, there are a lot of Germans, and there are a lot of, in yellow, you can see the national. There you have all these formal and non-formal national actors. Here you have French in orange, and this is how we were constructing. And of course, there are some places where we still have nodes like this big box here. Probably we just copy and paste some information to be processed, and with the arrows we try to connect all the actors around here, and that's why you can see we found some particular characters like Theodore Wolff in Ecuador, or of course Humboldt between the three countries, which we used as the main actors, the main nodes, the people with the most relations, both with formal naturalists and with non-formal naturalists. And one thing that we didn't say in this presentation because of the time is that we are also studying the networks in Europe or in the centers of calculation. We have this, for example, here in Germany, you can see a lot of actors that never came to America, but they studied America. They studied America through the collections, through the diaries of the travelers, through the samples. Sometimes took of stool and rice, but sometimes just receiving, the fossils and publishing about them. So this is the other part of the research that we were not able to show today, but that is around these huge networks of geo-knowledge circulation that was around people, formal researchers that were in the centers of calculation. So I don't know, Delfín and Carlos, if you would like to add something to my answer.
While they are thinking about it, can I ask more questions about this this image? What does an arrow mean? How did you decide to put an arrow in? Is that based on one interaction between, let's say, Humboldt and another? Is there some significance of the number of arrows to a person? How are you making decisions on just what you presented here?
Yeah, well, that was a tricky thing at the beginning, because we had the same question as you are formulating now. Okay, if you have two interactions, if it's in both directions, or if it was a relation of many years, should we make the line wider or something like that? And at the end, we decided not to do that, because that was going to complicate a lot the graph. So just because when we found a relation, we put an arrow, and probably I shouldn't say an arrow, because it's not to show one direction or another. It's just to show a relation, a connection between these two actors, but not this graphic does not show the intensity of that connection, neither the duration of that connection. And one thing I should add that I didn't say is that we also placed some institutions here because, for example, we found that in Colombia, for instance, you have these mines, these particular silver and gold mines around the country. And we found that many actors converged there. The mine, the direction of the mine, the exploitation of the mine, the companies associated with the mine showed us that it was necessary to put the institution also as an actor here. And these are, if I'm not, these are some gray boxes. So here we have mines and also schools of mines that were founded in Colombia, which was the most intensive mining country of the three in the 19th century. And there we have also these English companies, for instance, that were in relation with places in Ecuador, Venezuela, and Colombia, especially searching for gold.
Another question, if I may. Just the
Yeah,
size.
please. Please,
I'm just intrigued by your network, and this is very complicated to build, and very complicated in actuality. So I'm impressed with what you've done so far. Does the size of the box mean anything?
No, no, it doesn't. No, the size doesn't mean anything. And yes, we were at the beginning, we were wondering how to draw this map of actors. We found this software, which is very, let's say, it's very intuitive and it's very easy to manage because you can easily move the boxes, change the arrows, reaccommodate, because you start with a few boxes, but then it starts to grow and grow and grow, and then you have to relocate some actors. Probably the wolf started here, and then we understood we have to move it to the center. So this software is very, very easy to manage, very easy to change. Of course, there are other softwares more complicated to build networks, but at the end we found this is the easy one for us to manage. Yes, you can find yourself when you open it in the screen. You can be overwhelmed, but then you start to understand how to manage everything, and when you start to write and analyze the information, it's very useful. You just choose one character and just follow the lines to remember which were his or her connections. But the size of the box doesn't mean anything.
Thank you. You may want to explore network analysis software that's used by social media experts who are grappling with, it's mostly social media, but still the software might help you to think more in more detail about the connections and who's in a network, etc. So you may find that useful to work with. I've done a bit of network analysis using social media network software, and it allows you to build ideas or understand the closeness of groups, the connections, the strength of connections, who's on periphery and who's in the core of a particular network, etc. So it may give you more possibilities in posing questions to the data that you're building. Clearly, the data that you're working with is very complicated, and it's dense data because there's so many actors involved, and the strength of the evidence that you've got varies between actors. So you may want to think about migrating some of your data into software that will help you to pose more questions to the data. You've got a really complicated problem that you're dealing with, an interesting one, because networks are really intriguing, and how information moves within networks is really intriguing. So I'm impressed with what you've done so far, particularly with regard to the people who are sort of invisible, that you're trying to uncover. That's an impressive step to try and do that. Best wishes with that. I'll stop.
Thank you. Thank you. Certainly, we would like to explore that softwares. Yeah, we at the beginning we tried, but yes, as you said, it's not the same as the softwares that manage information of X or Instagram, of these networks that you can easily establish connections and intensity of relations. And also you have to be skilled for that. So then you have to make some training on that. So yeah, but surely we would love to someday be able to put all this data in one of these powerful source softwares. Sorry. And see what happens. But thanks a lot. You ratify something that we already were thinking about.
Yes, I understand the sophistication of software, and so I worked with a social media expert who actually created the software, which was immensely helpful from my perspective.
Thanks.
I can ask a question. I mean, I'm relatively familiar with the earlier period around 1800, the Andes, the accounts by Humboldt, etc. Something that really.
Sorry, I am not hearing you that well. Sorry.
I've got a question about the very rich imagery that you showed throughout the talk, and I was very struck by the number of illustrations, particularly sort of in primary media. Oil painting, watercolor, etc., of the actual teams of people embarking on these expeditions. I was wondering whether you could tell us a bit about the formulation of these and why they were produced. I mean, I've looked a little bit at Humboldt in the very early period, but I was also wondering about the extent that this practice of recording information was done, sort of to what end, but also the extent to which it started to develop with the advent of photography. Obviously, this was quite a big factor in places like British India, etc. But I have no idea about South America, so I'd like to know a little bit more about those developments.
Okay, so if I understand, the question is on the visual sources, how they were produced, who produced them, and yeah, thanks for the question. Well, again, Delfín and Carlos, feel free to jump in if you want to answer. Otherwise, I can continue. Okay. Well, thanks for the question. I will move to some of the pictures. Well, let's see. For example, this kind of paintings. Probably you know this, the explorers, the formal explorers, they sometimes were skilled to make their own drawings and paintings until the end, but most of the time they some just preliminary drawings until they went back to Paris or Berlin or wherever and worked with professional engravers or painters, etc. As Humboldt, for instance, and sometimes they hired local painters such as Rafael Troya, which was this painter we can see here. Troya was a very, very well skilled and trained painter. And Stubel, which was this German traveler, found him. He found he was an incredible portrait maker. He was making portraits of all of the elites in Ecuador. And he said, I would like you to come with me and work in landscape painting. And Troya actually did not make landscape painting by the time, but he was young. He was able to travel with the Germans, and he went with them to the volcanoes, to the mountains, and made I can't remember the exact number of landscape, but more than 50. This is a very well studied character by Alexandra Kennedy Troya. And unfortunately, many of his paintings were lost during fires and during and because of the wars, they were lost. And it's a very, very weird story on where these paintings of Troya could be. Right now, we have been looking for them in Germany, but in the two wars, we are not clear. They're probably now hidden in some place in France or Germany. We don't know, but it's not important. What I was trying to explain is that this is the case, for example, of a painter that was not trained to do landscape, but was found by these Germans. And unfortunately, we have photographs of the paintings, so we can work with it now. And I showed today only the camps, because we are also interested in non-human actors, but most of his paintings were without people, just of the volcanoes, the landscape. Of course, we have these other painters like Bellerman, who made incredible landscapes in Venezuela. And Bellerman was one of the painters that came after Humboldt. And Humboldt said, look, I wasn't able to make paintings to capture the landscape of these places, such as Cueva del Guácharo in Venezuela, or places like that. And Humboldt advised him to go to that cave and to Europe and the United States researchers how this cueva was. So many of them went by their way, but with instructions of characters such as Humboldt. Then you have, let's see, a lot of painters that were not that skilled, like this I should. Those are charts you could see, but this kind of drawings that were like non-professional drawings made. This is of course made by a professional after traveling in America, when coming back to Europe and working with professional engravers. This is a more interesting drawing, and I would like to come to this. The Choreographic Commission of Colombia hired professional painters to come with them. This is, as I tried to explain, this was a national enterprise to map the country, geological and botanical resources. But it was very important to these new republics to make these cartographies, first of the soil, where the rivers are, the roads, how to move, and then the geological map. So the geographical and the geological map, knowing what is in the subsoil. So during these commissions, did important explorations. They also hired these three professional painters from Venezuela and from Colombia to come with the explorers, doing several explorations to document very well some the daily life, also the mountains, the landscapes, etc. And for example, all these paintings, you can find it in the National Library of Colombia online. They are free in high resolution, and those are invaluable sources to see the geography of Colombia at that times. No, we choose this one, but there are a lot of more paintings. And then coming to photography, well, it's just the moment of change when they started to find what photography could do. We also worked with some sources from Pavel Rosti, which was an Hungarian that was the first man to take photographs, landscape photographies in Venezuela. So he came with his camera and made all these landscape photographies, an impressive collection. We have also worked with Wimper's photographs. Wimpers was an Englishman. He was more like a mountaineering and Andinist, but also made some geological observations, important geological observations. He was not a professional photographer, but all his photographs are also online through Europeana and in the archive of the Leibniz Institute. And there are also I would call particular sources. Stubble, for example, it was very common for the travelers to buy photographies. So Stubble made an impressive collection of photographies from Colombia and Ecuador, but it was not he, the photographer, but he went to all the professional, recently opened studios of photography in the different cities and buy photographies from these studios. Recently, a book was published in Colombia with the photographies he bought in Colombia, because it's also a very impressive testimony of daily life, customs, clothes, how the cities were, and also some of landscape. Not much. Most of the pictures of that collection are about people. So yeah, you have this how would I say, this complex collection of visual sources that come from different places, like that reflects how exploration was done. You know, people that came by their own way, people that came financed by the newly born republics, or people that were hired by the explorers when in the countries, or just people that wanted to show different things. For example, another character which probably is most known is Church, Frederick Edwin Church. He came to Ecuador and make a lot of landscape paintings of mountains. Some of them are still shown in the Met in New York, or the Detroit Institute of Fine Arts in both in the United States. No? Church's paintings are very famous. So you have this collection of characters with different origins, intentions, projections, financing, and we were like finding all of them. Fortunately for us, most of them are online now in online archives, so it was not that hard to find them. I don't know if I understood well the question of if it is what you were expecting to hear.
I mean, I'll follow up with with something actually. Your category of non-formal actors, I sort of thought was rather interesting. I'd be interested to hear how you come to define that category, because in my work on expeditions in the late 18th, early 19th centuries, most people who were paid were generally formal. I was also wondering what aspect were the artists, for example, and the other people in, say, more artisanal positions, I don't know, secretaries, etc. I'm sure they travelled. What category would you put those in? Would you count them as formal, non-formal, or something in between? I mean, I always think categorising in this nature is a bit too clear-cut for these kinds of situations. I'm always very, very hesitant about it. So I'd be interested to know your view on that.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Actually, these artists are into our map of actors. They are included, and we included them as non-formal actors. The painters, the drawers, non-formal actors, because they were not naturalists. You know? They were like this, all other people that accompany the naturalists. So yeah, it's probably now that you are asking that, I am wondering if we should create a third category, artists, like these people that was like professionals in the way, artists. They were visible through their own records, their paintings, their engravings, etc. But yeah, and now they are categorized as non-formal. Yeah, the people that not the formal, because they were not geologists, or they were not building formal geo-knowledge. But yeah, it's tricky. I understand. They could be seen also as generators of formal knowledge on geology. Their paintings and photographs and engravings, of course, are also how would I say that? They are also records, informations, even on the mountains, volcanoes, etc.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, this is just a comment. Something I've found relatively successful in producing a sort of visual diagrammatic of power structures on these expeditions is more of a sort of a pyramidal type hierarchy. So there you can see where the power is going and how the command chain is going in the process of gathering and accumulating information. And in that you can sort of produce multiple layers that assess as to the intellectual agency different kinds of actors had over the final sort of published products, if you like. So that might also be a way of thinking it or reorganising some of this information. But of course, you can't do that in a map like what you already have. You can only, it's more appropriate to do that for a single kind of expedition. But it might be worth lining a few up and seeing if it's sort of, you can produce something of that nature and seeing if there's any kind of correlation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I was thinking you might have puzzled to be quite interested.
Great, well,
So, as you were a little far from the microphone, I'm not sure if you just know if it's my internet connection or the microphone.
So did you hear what I had to say about the potential of a pyramidal type diagram?
Not completely, no. If you just come closer to the microphone, thanks.
Okay, it might be worth looking into it. Something I found very successful in analysing voyages in a sort of visual diagrammatic is looking at placing the different axes into a more sort of pyramidal type structure, depending on their different roles in the processes of knowledge production, but also the power held over these processes and the different levels of authority, which often is very clear. And it would be something usually you can tailor to specific expeditions, but it might be interesting. We were just saying this might be interesting to see if you can format the software that you've been using in your broader diagram to envision and outline some of these particular structures.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. Yeah, it's something we could explore. Yeah. Because yeah, it's a lot of data to manage, and probably looking into what is worth to say. It's that we relied a lot on secondary sources. So many of these expeditions, explorers have already been surveyed, researched by different historians. What we were trying to look is these invisibles, because as we said, most of these historians just name them or just say they were subalterns. They were not the main characters, etc. So we went to these secondary sources. Many of the painters of the Choreographic Commission, for instance, have been studied. Rafael Troya has a biography, very well. He's a very well studied character. Yes, but probably we. Well, we could try to make like a meta-analysis of how these actors fit into the expeditions as a separate group of actors. I don't know if I am understanding you. That's a suggestion.
Something of that nature would be, I think, quite appropriate and interesting to define the working roles and really bring these characters out to the foreground. I mean, the interesting thing that I've found is in terms of sheer numbers and quantity and analysis of material, the interesting thing has been is there's far more of these people that we know comparatively little about, working almost as what Shaken described as kind of invisible technicians, than the kind of tip of the iceberg at the top, which is usually these sort of employed naturalists who's corresponding with whatever metropolitan centre it is.
Yeah, something to think about it. Yeah, thanks.
Well,
I would really like to have the names of the two people there in the room, so I cannot approach you at the end of the presentation, but I would like to look for your and research.
Well, I would normally give you a card, but that's does that work?
if you want to like type it into the chat.
Okay, let me see if I can. I can see it again.
Just about.
Put it in the chat, maybe.
Yeah.
Or you could write it down in the chat. Yes, thanks a lot.
Can we put the email addresses from the speakers?
Maybe you guys can put your emails in as well, just so everyone can. Yeah, I don't think so, but if you want.